So sometimes when there's ongoing criminal conduct, and this is a very different case than what we often see, we will expose the criminal conduct and bring charges to let people know we're onto it, and hopefully to put a stop to it.
In your view, Pat, should the governor, on his own volition, step aside while he fights these charges, or should the Illinois state legislature move ahead with what it's threatened to do and impeach him? What are your views on both of those?
The Office of the United States Attorney has no view. We are not entitled to any view, and the view of what happens in the legislature of Illinois is not for us.
Why don't you tell
follow us in the trial?
Pat, given the scope and the brazenness of this alleged conduct of Governor Blagojevich, what does it say that this happened despite the cautionary tale of George Ryan?
I think it tells us, certainly, I don't want to jump ahead of things. Again, the governor is presumed innocent, but if the charges set forth in the complaint are true, it is an appalling statement about what's been happening in Illinois government with Governor Blagojevich and his chief of staff. And what it tells us is that it's great to have the FBI and their colleagues working on this, but we need people in the public to stand up and say enough. And if people start hearing things that they feel is untoward or improper, we need them to come forward. We're not going to end corruption in Illinois by arrests and indictments alone. I'm not minimizing the impact of charging people who commit crimes. What's going to make the difference is when people who are approached pay to play first say no and second report it. Carol.
Are you able to tell us if in the Tribune scenario it was the Tribune who came to you and said we're being extorted, or you that went to the Tribune with this revelation?
That's not set forth in the complaint. What we can tell you is that was conversations we intercepted on the governor's side, speaking to Mr. Harris about what they wanted to do.
So it's conceivable then that the Tribune at some level of management was considering or forced to consider the governor's alleged extortion.
I'm not going to speak for the Tribune or what happened, what message got there. I think the complaint made clear that Governor Blagojevich, what he had in mind was basically a get rid of the editors for this. The complaint also makes clear that Mr. Harris was one who wanted to be far more nuanced, and basically Governor Blagojevich delegated to him, well, you know what you got to do, be careful. So I can't describe to you what conversations Mr. Harris had. I think it would be dangerous to do so. And it goes to my point of it's one thing to attribute someone's own words to them. It'd be another to attribute someone's own words to you. And if I say something on tape, then I'm charged with what I said. If someone says something on tape about me, that's a different story. So I'm not going to speculate as to what, if any, conversations were had in the Tribune at this point. I don't think that'd be fair to them or anyone else. We're just describing his mindset of what Governor Blagojevich wanted Mr. Harris to do. We're not describing what happened in the scheme beyond that.
Mr. Fitzgerald, what does this say about Senator Durbin's letter to the president requesting commutation of George Ryan's sentence, which has only been a year of a 6.5-year sentence that was imposed for the crimes for which this office charged him and convicted him?
And that's a different matter. I told you the office doesn't have a view on what happens in sort of Illinois government. We just don't have a stake in that. To the extent the office has a view on the Ryan pardon, if we're asked by the Department of Justice or the White House to express that view, we will do so privately. But we're not going to. It's inappropriate for me, on behalf of the office, to express a view where the power of pardon and commutation rests with the president, and it's not our power. Our power. And we do not make a practice of commenting to other branches of government what they ought to do unless asked by them in private.
I have two questions. What does the law say about the appointment process of the U.S. Senate, as it relates to the governor before his arrest? And then I have another question. How could the appointment process of the U.S. Senate, change now that, the governor's been arrested?
And I'm not going to comment on any proposed legislative changes. I think we cite a statute. I can't tell you the numbers offhand, but the bottom line is it's the sole call. It's entrusted to the sole discretion of the governor of Illinois. The way the Constitution works, it leaves it for the states to figure out how a senator is replaced if they leave office for any reason. And Illinois has a statute that puts it in the sole hands of the governor. And you can look up that statute, but I'm not going to comment on any proposed legislation. Yes.
Pat, when politicians get together and cut deals, certain points of the sentences deal, it's not uncommon for everybody to consider the self-interest of all the parties involved. Where is the line between cutting an all-political deal and selling the United States Senate?
And I understand we're not, there's politics, and there's crime. And sometimes I think when people get in trouble, they try and blur those lines. I think when you start having quid pro quos, when there's a deal, if you give me this, and I will give you that in exchange for rewards. If you tell someone, if you read the complaint carefully, one of the conversations describes how the job that Governor Blagojevich wanted for himself in the union couldn't be just given to him by the union because they already have people doing that job. So when you say you want a job for 4 years, you want a salary of about $300,000, you basically want to work on behalf of a union and cost them $1.2 million to basically add no value because people are already doing their job. And part of that is an exchange, where in exchange, if you don't get that job, no one's getting a appointed Senate seat. We're comfortable in the law that someone who schemes to do that has broken the law. And we're not trying to criminalize people making political horse trades on policies or that sort of thing. But it is criminal when people are doing it for their personal enrichment, and they're doing it in a way that is, in this case, clearly criminal.
What advice would you give to anybody who would now take a senatorial appointment from Blagojevich?
I'm going to duck that one.
We understand the governor's taking that report this morning.
Yes.
Was he interviewed there, and did he make any kind of a statement?
I'm not allowed to comment on whether anyone made a statement, but he was arrested and taken to the...
Was he interviewed? Did they attempt to interview him?
I don't know if I can comment on whether we attempted to interview him. I can't comment on that.
Could Mr. Grant describe the arrest?
Sorry?
Could Mr. Grant describe the arrest? There were no cameras there, no witnesses apparently. Can you explain how it happened?
It occurred about 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was a phone call from me to the governor, advising him that we had a warrant for an arrest, that there were 2 FBI agents outside the door. Asked him to open the doors so we could do this as quietly, without the media finding out about it, without waking the children. He was very cooperative. That's it.
Was he handcuffed?
Yes, which is correct.
What did he say to you on the phone?
First question?
What did he say to you?
Well, I woke him up. So the first thing was this a joke? But I'll leave the rest. He tried to make sure this was an honest call.
How about his family? Was his wife there when the arrest happened? With his children? Did they wake up?
They did not wake up that I know of. They were beginning to stir as we left, but they were not awake and not aware.
There's a rumor that agents visited his house within the past couple of weeks to talk to him about this ongoing case.
I can't comment.
Mr. Grant, was the decision to, why did you make the decision to actually arrest him rather than allow him to turn himself in? Was that sort of send a signal here? Or?
It was exactly earlier, and that was we have a lot of things we learned from this wiretap, a lot of things we learned from these microphones. There's investigation that still needs to be done, and there are critical interviews that we have to do and cooperation we need to get from different people. So it wasn't about, as Pat said, tying this in a bow, waiting until spring, letting things be done that damage the state of Illinois, damage the United States Senate, hurt people. It was about what is good for the investigation, what is good to find out the truth about what is going on, because this goes beyond just the governor, it goes to other people who are involved in these schemes.
Mr. Fizgerald, would you make clear, just something...
And to the extent that there have been articles confirming or denying the accuracy of the articles, you can compare them against what happened. I will say this, you guys are in the information business of getting it and publishing it, and we're in the information business of getting it and using it. About 8 weeks ago, before we had the bug installed and before we had the wiretap up, we were contacted by the Tribune to comment or confirm or deny a story that they were going to run. And they ran that story. We thought we'd never had the opportunity to install the bug or place the telephone tap. And we made an urgent request for the Tribune not to publish that story. That is a very rare thing for us to do, and it's an even rarer thing for a newspaper to grant. We thought that the public interest required that the story not run. It was a very difficult conversation to have because we weren't allowed to describe what we were doing. And I have to take my hat off that the Tribune withheld that story for a substantial period of time, which otherwise might have compromised the investigation from ever happening. And I think that's something that we should take note of. And later, at a later point in time, that story did run. I believe it ran on Friday morning. And we were recording after the story ran that said Feds taped Blagojevich, and as set forth in the complaint days before, or even the day